Hello and welcome to another episode of the ZNotes Uni Guide. This is a set of events that we brought together in partnership with great organizations to help democratize the knowledge when it comes to university acceptance, applications, and thriving at these courses. Today, we're really excited to be working in partnership with a wonderful organization called Nuqsh. Nuqsh is a nonprofit student-run organization that aims to empower Saudi high school students and make the process of US universities more accessible through mentorship programs, workshops, consultation services, and outreach. To support us today, we have two amazing mentors from the Nuqsh program, Naif and Khalid, who are both currently at Ivy League universities and are here to share their insights, their experience of applying to universities, and some kind of real kind of tidbits of information that how they're kind of surviving this course as well. So I'd love to introduce you both. Naif, maybe starting with you. Please tell us where you're studying and what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me here. Hi, everyone. My name is Naif Al-Bashir. I'm currently a junior at Cornell University studying astronomy and data science. I'm currently in my third year, so I've been doing like a lot of extracurriculars in school, a lot of clubs, a lot of opportunities. So I've been enjoying it very much, and that's basically about me.
Fantastic, Naif. We're going to dive into learning a little bit more about what your course entails as well. And over to you, Khalid.
Hello, everyone. My name is Khalid Zaman. I'm a second year studying government and economics at Harvard University. And currently, in my second year, I've been really into economic policy research, what I've been conducting at the Kennedy School.
Fantastic. Again, looking forward to hearing more about your course and how you're taking it on. So for those of you who have joined in live, feel free to start sharing your thoughts, your questions as they come up through the chat. So Naif and Khalid can share the responses as well. We'll bring that question up. We'll ask our amazing guests to share their insights. But Naif, I want to kick off with you. So you're very specialized in the course that you're pursuing, and you've been at uni for a couple of years. I'd like to take you back a few years ago where you were applying to study here. Tell us a little bit about that kind of experience of applying to Cornell. What were you doing at school? Were you doing what course, like what study courses were you doing? Were you doing A levels or the AP or SATs? And we'll ask you a little bit more about extracurriculars as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my experience has been a bit different from most people, or even most people from my community. I was never in a like a program for like college preparation. I never had really any kind of program that would help you get into universities. It was kind of just a one-man army type thing. So when it comes to like information, when it comes to gathering anything that I need to know or I need to figure out, it was always on my own. And that's not a great thing. You should always try to like look for communities or like sources or like generally groups of people who are also interested in applying, and also just kind of like learn from each other and teach each other. But that's the kind of special case in my experience. I didn't really have that. It was kind of like an ignorance of opportunities and programs that were specified to like college preparation. So when it comes to applying to college, like 3 years ago, it was mostly me doing my own thing in school. I started thinking that maybe I should, I want to study abroad in my like second year of high school. So that's when I really started to look into it and what I need. I needed to level up my game when it comes to writing essays, when it comes to doing more stuff in school, activities, clubs, and stuff outside of school that weren't available in my school. Because when it comes to my school and my curriculum, it was a Saudi curriculum. I was not involved in A levels or IB, or it wasn't an international school. So it was very humble school. It wasn't special. The opportunities weren't, it weren't in abundance. You'd have to actively look for, and sometimes you'd have to do something to generate those opportunities within the schools, like to create them yourself.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I had to do. I had to maybe talk to certain teachers, organize new things, found a few clubs, because I'm pretty sure I've founded like maybe 3 clubs that are still and that are still in the school now, and there's like maybe two others who followed.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a new thing in my school. So when it comes to activities, I became the president of the student council. I founded like two clubs, and one third that um, it was mostly an astronomy club, a writing club, and a chess club. So
Okay.
anything really small like that, I would say it shows leadership. I would say it shows leadership. It shows stuff that Cornell truly looks for. It's about fit for Cornell. I would say it's mostly about fit and leadership and really how others see you.
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of what me started. And I applied. I I talked to like a few Cornell students,
Okay.
got their advice. So another important thing also is to really get advice from students who are currently there.
Yeah.
Uh, Even if you get like a professional person look into your essays or something, there's a certain hint of wisdom that students can give you that you might not find. So
Yeah.
I guess that's a brief starter.
That's fantastic, Knife, and actually, really inspiring as well, mashallah, for you to, take do it all yourself, really, not have that kind of extra support, and really build up your profile and your CV and your application to be able to be relevant. A lot of us kind of hinder and make ourselves feel smaller and are not able to do something because we say, oh, we didn't go to a top school, we didn't have extra
Exactly.
support, we didn't have a counselor. But your story is really an example of perseverance, persistence, and
Hmm.
your current results are kind of a real success of it. Khalid, over to you. You've slightly 1 year younger than Knife, so you're a little bit closer to that application journey. So tell us a little bit about that process. Again, what curriculum were you pursuing? What were things that like stood out to you when you put in your application that were really important and made a difference when it came to being selected by Harvard?
So similar to Naif, I actually went to a Saudi curriculum school. So, just like him, no APs, no IBs. So I think a similar thing that I kind of shared was the importance of taking initiative when you're hoping to apply to schools like this. It's really important that you try to not just start new clubs, but also try to see a change in your community.
Mm,
Because moving on to like kind of what Harvard wants in its application process, they've said this many times, they really want leaders in their community, which is something I try to like highlight in my application, as I've heard it
mm,
many times that they do seek for leaders, not just in their community. They're trying to make world leaders. They're trying to transform them. So I think it's very important for you to focus on making a change, focus on taking initiative, whether it's by club, whether it's by volunteering, which is something I highlight a lot in my application. I did a lot of volunteering throughout high
mhm.
school for causes that I believed in. Started an environmental club both in my school, and then it moved on to the city where we would help recycle and clean up parks. So all these are kind of like examples of you making a change that could reflect really well onto your application, and hopefully let them see the leader in you.
So I'm going to ask both of you a question, which is a little bit controversial, but I'd love to get your take on it. A lot of people applying to top universities end up, setting up nonprofits, initiatives, getting involved in volunteerism, but people in Ivy Leagues particularly picking up on that, right? Oh, you set up something, but 6 months in, you got your Harvard offer, you kind of it shut down. So there's a level of authenticity that needs to bleed through this work, and I can hear it and see it in your work, and the fact that you chose the courses that you have, and the fact that you're committing your time to give back to the community to ensure that the next generation of Saudis are able to access this kind of education as well. So like this is very authentic, and we can see that. So how do you think you portrayed your experiences in a way that the universities didn't think, oh, Naif set up this club, but he's gone now, nothing's going to happen, or Khalid started an initiative, but he's not going to do anything about it after he goes to uni. How did you get that sense of credibility, authenticity to your admission officers? I'll go to both of you, but I'll start with Naif.
You can start with Khalid actually.
Okay,
That's
Khalid,
okay.
over to you then.
Well, I think it's important that, if, for example, if you do start a club and you want to show its authenticity, make sure that's a club that's important to you, that's relevant to you. If
Mm,
I randomly started putting that, I started a calculus club to like teach children math, and nothing about me was related to math. None of my other activities or my essays, none of that was related to math, for example. Of course, they're gonna raise some eyebrows. They're gonna be like, okay, why did he do it? And usually, the only answer in their heads is gonna be, oh, he's doing this to look good on a college application. So I think if you really want to show your sincerity, then be sincere in what you choose. You know, choose stuff that you want to pursue, not stuff that looks good on your college app. Because if you want to make your college app look good, it's about showing your best self. The more you show of yourself, the more you show of your values, whether it's through activities or your essays. That's how to maintain authenticity that admissions officer are immediately going to pick up on.
Thank you for that, Khalid. I
Yeah.
really want to capture that show your best self, which is really not about show your best, show the best volunteering opportunity or the show the best internship or show the best company that you could set up, but your best self, which is your authentic self, and that's what they pick up on. Knife, over to you.
Yeah, I agree with Khalid. I think authenticity is really important. And when it comes to like showing authenticity, I think if you have like results that came from that club or that opportunity, for example, when I found like an astronomy club, it was for people who love astronomy, who love space. And one thing that we did was we would go out to like the desert, a place with no pollution, light pollution at all, and we do astrobiography. And I actually included some of those photos that we did inside of my application, and the application officers saw them. So that just shows the authenticity of this isn't just a club that's just in name only. No, we're actually doing stuff that we really like, that we really resonate with, and that just kind of shows that we're actually doing something because we like it and we love it, and it's still continuing on to this day. So I think it's really important. Yeah.
Amazing. As for some of our live viewers, you can always send in your questions, and we have our first question coming from Zulu, and I think this is a really good point, which I'd like to focus on. So Zulu says, "What are your thoughts on having a hook? I've been hearing these top universities are looking for a student with a defining trait rather than a well-rounded student or a jack of all trades." That's a really, really interesting question. So, in each of your stories as well, I've heard that there's a real something that's passionate. Now if we were talking before the call, but space fascinated you. You saw it at school in your astronomy club, and you were a scholar with the Saudi Space Agency, and now you're doing data science and astronomy at uni. So that kind of has pulled through that hook. Was that really important for you, or how can we kind of show it off in a top uni application?
Yeah, for me, I think it was really important. I kind of set myself up in a way that would show that I'm focused in a specific area. But I would say overall, in terms of personality, I am a well-rounded person. I do leadership stuff. I do various stuff in hobbies. I'm not really a space maniac or anything like that. I'm just only interested in it when it comes to my field of study. But when it comes to me as a person, I would say I'm a very well-rounded person who's interested in leadership, who's interested in writing, who's interested in creative writing, a very wide variety of things. But when it comes to my actual field that I want to pursue and the stuff that I want to make a change in, I think having a hook is definitely important. Like for me, being someone who was applying and being interested in this field and being backed by the space agency, who's also related to that field, and also having clubs who are related to that field. But obviously, it doesn't have to be like everything related to one single thing. I think it's important to have like one or two things that back up your hook, and then the others, I would say, maybe just kind of show off your personality more.
Yeah, absolutely. Khalid, over to you. How is what you were doing in your school possibly kind of influencing your course of study?
Well, obviously in school, when it came to what I was interested in, there were not a lot of opportunities when it came to specifically economics or government. So I looked towards those fields myself. I kind of applied for any opportunities that would give me more knowledge on the subject just because I was generally curious.
Hmm.
And that reflects all-rounded person. But I think hooks, specifically college hooks, are much more nuanced on what college you're planning to apply to. Uh, so, for example, some of the colleges I applied to that were liberal arts colleges, just like Harvard, they kind of do value well-roundedness. So I tried to show that my application with all my interests, stuff that I'm interested in that ranged from outside the scope of what I was applying to. For example, I explored like data science throughout high school, and that kind of influenced me because I talked about how I want to explore that, things like open curriculums. But when you're
Hmm.
applying to more specialized school, which I did, for example, for specific policy school, Georgetown, uh, I specifically focused just on any activities in high school that I've done that did relate to policy, like stuff I did, for example, the Ministry of Education, which was helping kids during COVID, get back to online learning. I tried to show them that I had passion for the subject throughout everything, and even stuff that I didn't really think were related to government economics that I did throughout high school. I tried to tie it in a way back to this, which was just a general theme of social change and what values that I was hoping to show, even if it didn't directly relate to my activities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think both of you have kind of highlighted that at the end of the day, it is really important to be, it's your personality that shines through. So I'd also love to bring the founder of Nuqsh on stage in a couple minutes to talk a little bit more in detail about the application process. You guys have kind of given us that personal experience really right off the bat. But I want to leave one more question. Both of you talked about leadership, and you displayed proactivity and leadership in everything that you've done, whether it was starting clubs. You just mentioned this amazing volunteering activity that you did. So bringing it back to leadership, and I think this may be the way to kind of answer the hook question as well. All these different things that you were talking about now, if you talked about your creative writing, was also displaying the sense of being someone who's receptive and able to be connecting with other individuals, to start a club, to bring people together. You were showing this off in various ways. Speaking to students who may be struggling to really highlight this characteristic about them, what are some ways that you would advise, especially coming from a school which didn't really support you in this Ivy League application? You talked about clubs and stuff, but what are other ways that one could display their authentic self and their leadership skills in a way that will support them in their university application? I'll start with Naif. I'll pass to Khalid, and we'll go to Beckett after that.
Yeah, I think definitely with your essays. I think my essays were, if you were to ask me what is the one thing that helped you get into Cornell the most, I would definitely say straight up my essays. So I think showing your best of your ability when it comes to your personality in your essays is the absolute best thing that you can do. Your essays are really, this is very specific to Cornell, but in general as well, it goes across the board. That showing that you fit the school, like what I did was show that I fit the school when it comes to my essays. I incorporated my creative writing interests when it comes to writing my essays as well. So It wasn't just an essay, just writing an essay. I took it like as a chance to kind of use one of my hobbies, which is creative writing, to incorporate it into my essay. So I feel like that made it more personal, because this student is using one of his hobbies to write this essay. He's not writing it in a general way. He's not writing it in a very academic way. It's something that he likes, which is creative writing, incorporating it into the context of the essay question or the essay prompt.
Yeah.
So when it comes to writing, I feel like having a very distinct style of writing that is, different from other people, different from generative AI, especially having your own distinctive touch to that. As when it comes to like the hook, the start of the essay, and how you connect it back at the end to the hook, or like to a specific part of the essay. I feel like your essay is definitely your best shot at showing authenticity.
That's incredible, Naif, and I think that's often overlooked, the importance of your writing skills and again, going back to authenticity. It's about like your distinct writing style, a combination of your readings, your experiences, the culture you've been brought up in, the languages that you speak. All of that comes in when you write. And I think when especially in this age of generative AI, when we think, oh, we could put everything in and get a very fancy looking essay, sometimes it's not about making that looking at a fancy looking essay. It could be about some devices or some styles that you've appreciated, or a reading, maybe you enjoy 19th century French literature, and you may be bringing quotes and stuff from there. But that's very fantastic, and thank you for sharing that piece of advice. Khalid, I'll pass to you on the same question.
Honestly, one Naif mentioned a very specific line, which is, if people ask me how I got into doing my essays, I do say that line a lot too. So I'm glad to know that's a common sentiment. I think the reason for that is because, like, pretty much what Naif said, it's about showing your true self. I think it's a common theme that we keep discussing. I think that's the most important thing that US universities are looking for. They really
Yeah.
want to do see your like most authentic true self. In comparison, for example, where how the UK personal statement would be more about like
Yeah.
much more straightforward. The US university do like to see a sort of like how you write your essay, not just what you write it about.
Yeah.
um, what common themes are showing up, how what do you view as important enough to mention in your essay. They're all looking at questions like that. So specifically when we talk about essays, it's important to just keep in mind the importance of uh, not just talking about a specific thing. It's how you word it, how you're interested in it, how do you want to
Mm.
show the universities that you have interest in this thing and how it relates to you personally.
Yeah. Thank you both. It's really fascinating and really inspiring to hear stories, of course, and also your generous advice. So I'd like to take a quick switch of pace. I'd like to dive into technicalities of how it is about applying to U.S. unis, and we have the founder of Nuqsh to help share us with Becca. In the meantime, Naif and Khalid will take you off stage, but to our listeners and live viewers, feel free to continue asking your questions because right at the end we'll bring everyone back on stage to have a Q&A and wrap up. So Naif and Khalid, thank you so much for now, and we'll bring you
Thank
back
you.
in a couple minutes.
Thank you so
Sounds
much.
good.
Okay, bringing Becca now. Becca, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and it's been amazing to hear from Nuqsh mentors already.
Hi, Zubair, and thank you for buying the time with the technical difficulties. I hope my voice is clear
It's perfect.
now.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, mm, I'm trying to share the slides. Are the slides do the slides show?
They will come on. But before we kick off with that, Becca, maybe tell us
Okay.
why you were interested in starting Nuqsh and what was the inspiration behind that.
Okay. So maybe correcting a little misconception. I didn't actually start Notch. I was one of the people who started working there early on.
Okay.
But the main idea was that we were part of some pre-college prep programs that helped us apply to U.S. universities, and we thought that there are many amazing people around us who deserve similar opportunities, who are amazing in their own ways, and we should support them. And it started as simple as us trying to help people in our own schools at the time. And once we tried to expand to cover more people because we wanted to help even more people, not just the ones in our own schools or our friends, we kind of hit a wall. It's really hard to expand to other places physically, and getting schools to give you the time of the day to
Yeah.
explain something that is not necessarily they're familiar with. And that's when we decided to switch fully online. We decided to go directly to the students. So we started doing workshops and mentorship programs. And maybe the question is that follows. I'm anticipating your question is why mentorship specifically.
Hmm.
Um, I think out there is an abundance of resources. ZNotes is an amazing resource, and I'm pretty sure there's other resources that can help in different subjects and different topics. Um, and it's usually two things that are missing for people applying. One is navigating all of those resources
Yeah.
and knowing what to do exactly. And two, it's when you're applying to university in this context, you need two things. You need to understand who you're talking to, and
Hmm.
you need to also be able to explain yourself. And who's better to do that than people who have actually gone through that process and came from a similar background. So even when we do our matching between mentors and mentees, we look at their backgrounds, similar schools, similar subjects, and so on.
Yeah.
So we can clearly present those high potential talents and the way that universities do look for. And just to close that off, what's the aim behind all of that? Is it just sending people to universities or studying abroad and all of that? That's part of it, but there is a higher goal. To develop as in the context of Nuqsh as a country, and maybe like in the context of Xenot, like globally, um, we need to build our talent, we need to build our youth. And one of the best ways to do that is giving them equitable access to education, and
Mhm.
really good education. And hopefully, from that, people can go on their own way, achieve their own aspirations, and help their societies, their countries, and so on.
Thank you, Bakr, and I appreciate, and thanks for clarifying as well. And actually, before you joined, Naif and Khalid were actually saying exactly the same thing. That I think Naif
We
said that he
haven't
spoke to
rehearsed,
other.
so
We Naif said that it was the students he spoke to at Cornell which really helped him understand how to communicate and understand what the college is looking for. So without further ado, I'm gonna bring our couple slides back on stage, and I'd love for you to just talk through the technicalities when it comes to applying to US unis. Feel free to share questions as you're listening to Becca's points, and we're gonna go back into Q&A in a couple minutes. So over to you, Becca.
thank you. So, in an ideal world, this would have been the beginning, me telling you that there are no bad questions, and be interactive and have your questions at the end. Um, but I think we're a bit past that. Also, another ideal word, I would have started with the introduction of who we are as Nuqsh, but I think we've covered that. And ideally, went into the overview of US college applications, which what we are going to do now. And I think this is a good example of always being prepared for the unexpected. Hopefully, they're not bad unexpected things. Okay, going to the overview of the US college applications. I think just a refresher. There are key requirements for US college applications, starting from the academic ones. So you have your SAT scores, your GPA, and your English score. And then there are, let's say, the personality slash you as a person requirements. So those are the essays, the extracurriculars you've done, and in some cases, recommendation letters. Now, I know the slide is visual, but I want to dive into certain aspects of this criteria. First, I think for recommendation letters, that's the easiest one to get out of the way. And not all universities do ask for it. For example, the UCs do not. And generally, if you come from a school outside of the US, you will not be penalized for a bad recommendation letter. Good one would help you, but a bad one wouldn't really harm you, because universities do understand the systems you're coming from and the different um, school types and so on. Um, so that's first. In terms of recommendation letters, I think those are the easiest to get out of the way. Now, another easy thing to get out of the way is the English score. So in the case of US, it's mostly the TOEFL, but also you have your Duolingo and IELTS. For Duolingo is sometimes accepted, and this is relevant if you are not a US national. So if you're coming on a visa, you need that English score, even if your university doesn't ask for it. The good thing is it's a checkbox. A checkbox. If you get the minimum score set by your university, the ones you're applying to, then you're good to go. So, for example, if your university have a minimum of 100, if you score 100 or 110 or even a perfect 120 in the TOEFL, it's not gonna matter. As long as you've checked that box, you're already satisfied the requirement. That's it. So, as long as you get the minimum score, do not spend more time on this. Now, for school GPA, I think it goes without saying with the SAT score. The only thing is that with SAT, we've seen in the past years, especially after COVID, that universities look for, not all universities ask for the SAT. Some of them have it as optional. Some of them actually still have them as required or have returned to require them, and some don't even allow you to apply or like to add your SAT score. Now, in the case that it is optional, it's always good to have them. especially if it's a good score. But obviously, maybe like you wouldn't spend as much time. But still, optional doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Uh, if the university doesn't ask for it, like the UCs right now, then that's good. You don't even have the option to submit it anyways. And since you're usually applying to multiple universities, probably will have to do the SAT. Essays is where you can play. And the way I see the essays and extracurriculars fitting into a person's profile, you've done a lot of things since ninth grade, so ninth, 10th, 11th, all of that. And let's say they are data points, okay? You need to paint a picture, or you need to paint a story out of those data points and present them in a way that tells the universities about yourself and also appeal to those universities. So again, back to being able to explain yourself, but also knowing how to convince the other. Those are the two aspects. So that really depends on something really essential, which is in the next slide, the personas of the universities you're applying to. The slide might be a bit intimidating, but in summary, if we take your personality slash extracurriculars on one aspect, you have those people who have done a lot of things. They've done debate, they've done STEM related things, they've done volunteering on all of that, right? Those are kind of fragmented, or I would say diverse. And then you have those who have doubled down on a specific area, who have done Olympiads or ISEF or research or whatever, and really like went into like one specific field from like ninth grade up until 12th grade, right? So that's a different story. And then in terms of your SAT scores and academics, you have universities who have a high priority focus on those aspects. Universities who have some priority, like they still do care, obviously, but like maybe not as much. And now there are universities who do not care about all of that, and that is not really part of our presentation today. I wouldn't qualify them as top universities. And at the intersection of those two axes between the extracurriculars and the SAT scores, you have your different. You have four different types of universities, and which ones to apply to depends on a couple of things. One is obviously your preference, and two, your current standing. So if you already had a high SAT score, right, and you have so then you're already like in a good shape to apply for two out of those four types at least, and possibly the other two. Now, if your SAT score is not necessarily the best one out there, maybe you're only able to apply to universities who don't necessarily focus on SAT scores, maybe more on the extracurriculars. So you have your persona 1 and 3, right? Now, where does the Ivy League, let's say, fit into that? It's mostly in category 4. I've named them Ivy League. I've named the category like as Ivy League just to even simplify it. So they still care about your scores, but as Khalid said, and maybe that's one of the few things I've quote of what Khalid was saying, is that they also want to see you as a person. What have you done on a broader level, not just in your subject. Now, then you have your universities who really care about scores, but also care that you're focused. And those are mostly the really rigorous universities, and in simple terms, it's MIT and Caltech. So I can only speak of like the numbers I know in terms of Saudi students, but all the Saudi students who have went to MIT or are basically either Olympiad or ISIF medal winners at some point, with only I think one exception, and that person still did Olympiads, just didn't really like win a medal. So that's one example of an really extreme, high academic, high focused university.
Hmm. Okay, I'm
Now,
gonna just jump in for a second, and I just want to appreciate the kind of clarity with which you've presented this. I think we oftentimes are um, overwhelmed, and we think that every we need to be applying to everywhere, and we should be accepted by everyone. And I think what you've just described today is actually that every university has its own characteristics. Same as we have our personality, they also have personality, and that it's a matchmaking game, right? So you have to match that personality for it to be appropriate. Um, so I think what I just want to kind of surface, and maybe you've already said this, but I want to make it a bit even more clear, is that of course you there are always outliers. You might be not getting the top SAT scores, but still get into one of the top universities, or vice versa. And actually, most often people get perfect SAT scores, but never get into Ivy Leagues. Um, it really depends on so many factors, but having the clarity with which Becca has presented today, even if you don't go with these exact buckets, or if you move the axes a little bit here or there, the point that I think is really important to take away is that as much as you care about the name and brand of a university, you you are going to spend 3 or 4 years of your life there, if not longer, and their characteristics and personality make a big difference in the type of experience you have and the type of career and future you can have together as well. The alumni, the community that surrounds it, it's very, very human driven. And I think it's a really good exercise for you before you even get into like, I only want to apply to Ivy League, is to think about what are the characteristics of those Ivy Leagues. How do you fit in? And I think again, I think Naif said, I spoke to Cornell Uni students. I asked for their style and how they display leadership. Some people expect a very dictatorial leadership style, and that may be the next Nobel laureate who wants to figure out the most important theorem, while others are compassionate community leaders in a different way, and so some other universities are looking for them. So I just wanted to just like pause for a second and just appreciate Becca's kind of insights on this, but also really clarify that this is such an important point that we often miss out in our kind of rush to get to the top uni, without considering that top unis may not, which uni you select makes a big difference on who you are as an individual and who they are as a community. I'll pause. Back to you, Becca.
thank you, Zubair. No, actually, I was gonna a bit dive into that in the next slide, because funny enough, I am a bad example when it comes to university selection. Um, and I think I'll just switch to that slide. So that slide was basically what to do and what not to do. And I agree with you. It shouldn't. If you read the first not to do, don't just select all Ivy Leagues. And I mean from experience. So back in high school, pretty much like my selection criteria for universities was that, well, what are the top 10 Ivy Leagues? Okay, 15. That's 15 universities. Okay, I'm applying to those. Without really much thought into other aspects. I was just focused on the academics, the name, and so on. Uh, and obviously, if you really think about it, this is a place where you will spend your next 4 years at. So if you hate cold weather, don't go to Cornell or go to the to the Midwest, for example, UIUC or anywhere in Chicago. Maybe California is nicer. If you really want a big city, then probably you're not applying to UIUC. Or again, I'm sorry for hating on Cornell, and now if you will have your chance to get back at UCLA in a bit. Um, and really, those things do matter. Um, and even on a deeper level, it's the environment and the people you interact with. So it's not just the place, it's not just the weather, but also the kind of culture, environment, and all of that. So one thing, and maybe here I'm a bit biased towards my own university, but one thing I liked about UCLA is that everyone is being helpful, and eventually, like even if you don't find help like from the first person you ask, eventually they will direct you to something, to someone who will. And that really warm culture, inviting culture with really diverse people. It was something I really liked about where I was going. Even though when I applied to UCLA, I added it last minute just because it was easy to add the university in the UC application. And the first thing I came to know about it after I got in was that they had the best dining halls in the US. My friend thought that was a really important fact to tell me. Um, and I didn't really do all of that due diligence. So talk to people, please. Don't be me. And do your research about those universities to one, know which ones you should apply to. The requirements, specifications, like the UCs don't require SAT. So if you have really strong extracurriculars and not necessarily the best SAT score, that's where you apply. But also when you're choosing the place where you will live for the next 4 years and maybe even more. And back, maybe just to do a recap. So a college application, like if you look at it from the admission officer perspective, they probably have a minute and a half to read your whole application and to decide if there's something interesting about you. So they will come back to your application later and read it more. And so building that coherent, unique application that stands out is really important. Um, I know one of the pitfalls of college applications is that trauma writing essay of how poorly you have been living and challenges you've overcame, and finally you are here. And unfortunately, like that does appeal to admission officers, but also there are other ways of showing the impact you have on the people around you, on society, and all of that, and what you plan to do with that education. Um, I think that's pretty much like from my side. I hope it wasn't a long overview. Um, and maybe finalizing this, especially with technology we have today. Please do not lie, misinterpret facts, and be pretentious. Uh, you might get in, it might work, but I don't think that's a general way of life that anyone should do. Be genuine, show your true self as much as you can. Yes, you can be colorful with words and numbers, uh, and show the impact in a good way, but still be always rooted in truth and facts and ethics. That's it. And back to you, Zubair, and hopefully we'll have Khalid and Naif join us also in a bit for questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Becca. This has been super insightful, and I hope we can share some of those slides with our listeners and even later listeners as well, because that kind of the graph that you showed really helped. I'm gonna ask Naif and Khalid to join us again. I'll add them to stage, and as hopefully they can join in live as well. We have a couple of questions that have come through as we've been listening, and I'll start in that order that have arrived. Um, I'll start with a question on essays. So Zulu asks, in terms of essays, what are your thoughts on the current trend of writing a weird or unconventional topic? Like I hate the letter S. Should we try portraying a life experience in that way? I have not come across this trend, but I don't know if any of you have, and if you want to speak towards that. Khalid, do you want to kick off?
I actually know that I hate the letter S girl. She's one of my classes,
Oh,
and
wow.
I
Okay.
think when it comes to like writing unconventional topics, I actually did talk to her about this because her essay is really famous, specifically in Saudi Arabia. Like I know so many of us know that I hate the letter S essay, and honestly, in my opinion, although it definitely is interesting to incorporate your own writing style and incorporate whatever you think would be more authentically you. I think actually it might backfire if you try to be a little too abstract. If you try to look for like a unconventional topic a little too hard, admissions officers will see that and they definitely will notice like the inauthenticity of it. They're gonna notice that
Mm,
you're trying to have like a quirky essay. So I'd say you should definitely try portraying it if it comes off as natural. Uh, a really good piece of advice I heard before was that if you're funny, be funny. If you're poetic, be poetic. But just don't try to like write in a style that you're not comfortable with because it's gonna come off as unnatural.
Fantastic, and that's such a coincidence that you actually know the person who wrote that essay as well. I'm kind of curious now. I want to read that essay too. But yeah, as we've kind of talked before, I think it's authenticity that matters the most. I wonder now if you want to say anything, but
Yeah, I think I had the same idea as Khalid. I think it's cool if you have like a quirky take on something that ties back to like a meaningful life experience. Like it could work, but like Khalid said, it's also really important to to not make it force it just because it's trending.
yeah,
If like it's this format feels natural to you and still communicates something valuable about who you are, you can like change it up and make it into a more unique format that's actually you. And if you can do that, then go for it. But like Khalid said, it's admissions can tell when an essay is trying too hard to be
yeah,
quirky, so it can actually backfire. So it depends on how you do it and the reason you're doing it.
absolutely. Another question, which I think would be a really helpful one to hear from everyone, is what's the average amount of unis you think a student should apply to, including reach, targets, and safeties, with consideration of maximizing your chance and without compromising quality. I'll start with Becca because he had a really important point around the selection of universities. How many did you apply to, Becca, and what would your recommendation now
I,
be?
I think around 15.
Okay.
I don't really remember. It's been a while. I see Khalid nodding, so I hope that 15 is also somewhere near his number. But I think so. At the time, sorry, I'm bringing a bit of ancient history, but the Common App only allowed you to apply to 10 universities, and then
Mhm.
you have your UCs, your UIUC, MIT, and I forgot. I think Minnesota had its own application portal. I never
Yeah,
applied there. I knew that I couldn't handle the weather, so um, yeah, that's like a bit like was a limiting factor. But I think usually people apply around 15 universities. Some choose to apply to only 10. Some might go a bit further and apply to 20 universities. But I think that's like the range. And I think in terms of the composition and between reach, target, and safeties, I think the definition of a reach, target, and safety really depends on where you stand. So if you already have a really good SAT score, then your targets and reach are pretty similar. It just really like maybe the marginal difference is not much, but obviously like there are some universities who are still better than others in certain ways. And then your safeties are like think of it as there is a bell curve and you're pushing the bell curve as to the right as you have higher SAT scores.
hmm,
Um, so the definition of your targets and reach and safeties as a person and will definitely differ from the standard definition of what they mean for everyone.
yeah. What were your? How many? How many did you guys apply to? Knife. How many did you apply to?
Personally, I went kind of below. I applied to only seven, and Cornell was probably the best one, and the rest were kind of like UIUC, Maryland, Purdue, a bit lower. But yeah, that's just I think it depends on, like Becker said, where you stand and the kind of university that you're looking for, and maybe you just want like a specific set of unis, and you can't see yourself in any more than, and maybe you just don't want to apply to more because it's tiring.
Yeah,
More universities is tiring, so that's kind of one of the reasons I also applied to only seven.
got it. Khalid.
I think just like Becca, I applied to around 15, 16, which is like on the higher side, I guess. But the Common App right now has 20 possibilities. So that would the
Yeah,
UCs also, and that's almost like a maximum of like 25 you can apply to. And I think just like what Naif said, I think it's just important to see where you see yourself and apply to as many that you feel comfortable. I
yeah,
know people who only applied to 5, and I know people who only applied to 30, and they got they applied to where they wanted to, and they got in, and they felt comfortable with their decision. So I think it's not just specifically about how much you think you should apply to; it's also about how much universities you see yourself being in.
absolutely. Yeah. Becca, I don't know if you know this, but I also applied to UCLA, though I didn't go there. I dropped the A and stayed at UCL. It still was one of the only UC application that I put through. I applied to seven, and I was, very, very clear about where I wanted to go. And I think one point that was on the back of the slide, which I want to maybe reiterate, is that when you target a university, you target their personality. So your essays, at the end of the day, will be tied to that course, right? So you need to make sure that if you try to spread yourself too thin, you lose out on the ones that actually you matter most to you as well. So that clarity is helpful. I'll go to the next question from Tuba, who's asked, you mentioned having a school GPA. Is that really necessary, or can it be looked over? Becca, maybe that's a question for you. I think you're muted. Yeah.
Okay. So it is there in the application. Actually, it's a very long section where you add your grades and all of that one by one. It's I don't know if it has changed since my time, but it was the most like boring part of the application.
Hmm.
So it's really hard to ignore a whole section.
Yeah.
And now, if there are certain circumstances of why, let's say, you're not necessarily scoring as high as others in your class, that's why you have essays, and you can show that. But yeah, it is still like something really considered, um, alongside with your other scores.
Khalid, I wonder whether you have anything. Was it an important part for your application as well?
I think school GPA was not something that I looked up specifically, uh, because I just kind of say as an open and shut case. Same thing with the SAT. Once you pass a certain threshold, which is, for example, depending on which university you're applying to, for the higher ones it might be a 3.9 or a 95, depending on how your score curriculum looks like. Sorry, 97. Uh, once you pass that threshold, universities aren't really going to care. Uh, they mention this a lot in a lot of the videos that I've seen, that once you go past a certain score on your SAT, your IBs, or anything, university will start looking at your, more subjective things like your essays or your ECs to kind of evaluate. So I'm not going to say that it can be looked over, because of course it's such an integral part of the application. It's strongly considered, but it definitely can, because it's so, open and shut. It's very objective. It's an objective score. You should work extra hard in your essays and your extracurriculars if you want to reflect something that you think your GPA isn't reflecting about you.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think it's important to realize that kind of those thresholds they're very true. So I've spoken to admission officers who say that when applications come through, they get basically categorized into different, and they basically do imagine thousands of applications. They have to do it in a very automated way. So certain applications just don't make it, and some things are just literally checkbox marks that have to be achieved before they even have a chance to review it more deeply. I'll go to the last question of the
I
session
will add
today.
just one quick point,
Yes, please do.
actually, for that question. I think just adding to what Khalid was saying, that yes, a 97 and a 98% out of 100 would probably not matter. And that just reminded me, because I made an intentional choice back in high school. So uh, I could have stayed, and like, rather than studying 3 or 4 hours a day, maybe eight, and probably my GPA would have been a bit like 2 points higher or something. But then I made a conscious decision that in that 4 hours difference, I would rather work on other things that I'm passionate about, and that
Mhm.
does leave a better impact than maybe getting a 99 rather than a 97 out
Yeah,
of 100.
yeah,
So that's also maybe like a personal choice as well to make.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's a great point. It's about the prioritization as well. At some point, there's only so much you can do. That the marginal difference becomes smaller and smaller. The Pareto principle kicks in as well. Um, Ashley asks, can I join uni right after GCSE without doing A level, or how does it work? Maybe I can answer that because it's more for the UK system. Actually, most universities will expect you to finish high school, and GCSE is not the completion of high school. In most cases, if you apply to the UK, you'll be applying to a foundation course, which will kind of replace that AS and A2 year, and then you'll be able to apply for the first year entry. I'm not sure in the US whether you have anything like that, although the equivalent would probably be college. So you'd go to a community college and complete that initial year and then move into a kind of a university or institution. So that's probably, and I think it's a little bit more of a unique case. So you should do a little bit more research on that as well. I'll go to the last question then, which comes from Zulu again. How long did you guys spend on each application? Would a month and a half be enough to complete my applications and essays? Um, maybe I'll ask Nai first, because this is like a very subjective thing as well, of course, but it also really depends on prioritization matrix. Again, like, what do you spend most time on? Naif, how long did it take you, and what would you advise?
Yeah, I would say it's very subjective, and also depends on things that you're currently doing, and also how many schools you're applying for. But for me, it took about, I would say, like 2 months, and largely part of that was just reviewing what I had already done. Many of that wasn't actually just working on it; it was reviewing, getting advice, getting feedback. So I think you should think about it this way: there's time you should allocate for actually applying and writing the essays and doing all the stuff that you need to do, recommendation letters and everything. And there's another part where you have to take a step back and look at everything, get feedback, get advice, so and then change it up accordingly. So I think it's definitely a nuance, and you should kind of look at it from a flexible point of view.
What about you, Khalid? How are you navigating this part?
I think, well, I definitely say in school holidays, it's nice that you have a month and a half to focus on them. Me personally, I'd say I spent the entire semester, the fall semester of my senior year, on it since I started school. But obviously, that would be like more to the 3 to 4 month mark of just doing them steadily. So kind of just depends on how much effort you want to put. Month and a half, depending on how much you're applying to, I don't see it being such a big issue. But yeah, as I said, my personal experience was the first semester of senior year.
Yeah. And maybe I can chip in as someone who has to write recommendation letters and support applications as well. I'm sending out Common App recommendations now for some of my interns. It's also important to realize that, especially for those who are recommending you, advising you, reviewing your essays, they are also busy people. And I tell all my interns that you need to give me at least 2 weeks in advance to help me write that essay. And so if that is not something you're taking into account as well, that actually creates a big issue for quality content from your advisor and mentors. I think also it's an important thing, again, reflecting on the points that our great Ivy Leaguers talked about right at the beginning, was this is a creative process. Creative processes take different times. Some require much longer. Some require you to go through an experience before you write something. And maybe you need to do that in that month and a half. So I think as early as you can is worthwhile. Whether you do the full application end to end is not important, but I think being in that headspace of where I want to go, what I want to achieve, how I want to communicate that, how does that full package look like, the recommendation letter, the application, the statements, the all of that is such a key part. And you're going to be picking up things like, you'll be picking up your IELTS score and you get your SATs, and these things all take time. So always overcompensate for the time it will take. That's always my recommendation. Malaika asks, my school GPs were not the very best, but my SAT score is really good. Will that affect in any way when I'm applying? I think, Becca, you already answered this question slightly, so maybe you could just give us a little bit of a refresher on that.
Yeah, again, so scoring high or getting a good score in the SAT, it means you have the potential, the aptitude to do well academically. Now, there is certainly reasons why you haven't done as well in your scores in terms of school. And I think that's really important to explain. And again, I don't know, I feel saying that your scores or GPA wasn't really the best. I think also that's a subjective thing to say. So are you saying that 95, you got a 95 out of 100 and you think that this is not the best, or maybe it's a 97 or maybe it's an 18? So defining that is a whole different matter. But I think certainly, given that you've scored high in the SAT, then you probably do have the aptitude academically, and try to explain any of the reasons, and maybe reflect also like personally why you haven't really scored that good in school. Some people, for example, maybe didn't really have that much interest in academics or college or anything, maybe when they were in ninth grade or 10th grade, and then something happened to them that changed their path, and now they are focused, and that's why they got the good score. That's a story to tell. So it really depends on the circumstances and how you explain it in the application.
Thank you, Bakar. I think that's a really important point to highlight. Which brings us to the hour. I really appreciate all of your time and the impactful work that your organization does. So a massive thank you for you. So Naif, Khalid, Bakar, you shared a lot of insights, a lot of really key details that would not have been available to many of us. Very thankful for that.
Thank you so
Yusuf,
much.
for
It's
arranging
a pleasure.
this, and happy to work with you.
It's
Thank
a
you, Naif.
pleasure.
I know it
We're
was last minute, so thank you.
No, we did really well. So to wrap up, I just want to say a big thank you to our ZNotes team as well, who've been planning and organizing and facilitating these things. This session is part of the UniGuide webinar series, where we run sessions with amazing partners like Nuqsh to share insights that are often not available to communities otherwise. We have a full set of webinars, guides on undergraduate courses, and a lot of support available on znotes.org/UniGuide. And of course, Becca and we would love to hear how you thought about this course and how this session went. So please do share your feedback at the end of the call. We're going to be displaying a QR code where you can scan, or you will send a message in the chat as well. Once again, thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful hosting these amazing people, and we look forward to seeing you on another live session. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thanks so much.